What happens when a man who once held the world in his hands and became the first in history to walk away with a $100 million career check chooses to live behind a wall of silence? We are going inside the quiet 2026 world of boxing legend Sugar Ray Leonard. At 69 years old, he is a titan of industry living a life that stands in jarring contrast to the super fight era he helped build. Today, he lives inside a $50 million estate, drives a legacy of discipline, not excess, and protects a $120 million empire. Most people remember Ray for the flashy taunts, the no mas victory, and the $1 million smile. But what almost nobody knows is that the real tragedy of Sugar Ray's career didn't happen in that ring. It happened in the shadows of his own $50 million fortress, where a secret battle with addiction, childhood trauma, and a crumbling private life nearly burned his legacy to the ground. He wasn't just winning fights. He was conquering divisions, becoming a world champion across 5 different weight classes, and establishing himself as the centerpiece of boxing's most dangerous era. From welterweight to light heavyweight, Ray didn't just collect belts. He collected the legacies of other Hall of Famers, proving that a single man could dominate the entire spectrum of the sport. If you respect fighters who win inside the ring and master life outside it, hit that like button and subscribe. This is one you won't want to miss. To understand the man, we have to go back to Wilmington, North Carolina, May 17, 1956. Ray Charles Leonard didn't grow up with dreams of boxing glory. His mother, Getha, named him after the legendary musician Ray Charles because she hoped he'd be a singer. She wanted a life of melody and grace for her son. Instead, he became a man who composed symphonies with his fists, turning the violence of the ring into a rhythmic, terrifying art form. Under the guidance of coaches Dave Jacobs and Jenks Morton, Ray's talent bloomed into something ethereal. He wasn't just fast. He was a blur of calculated intent, possessing a rare ring IQ that allowed him to see punches before they were even thrown. During one of his early sparring sessions, U.S. Olympic assistant coach Sarge Johnson pointed at the teenager and said, "That kid you've got, he's sweet as sugar." The name stuck, and it became a prophecy of both beauty and bitterness. By the time the 1976 Olympics arrived in Montreal, he was the crown jewel of the American team, a lightning-fast prodigy who moved as if he were suspended on wires, dancing around opponents who seemed to be moving in slow motion. He dominated 5 bouts, finally dropping Cuba's fearsome Andres Aldama in the finals to secure gold. Then, he shocked the world. "I'm finished," he said. "My dream is fulfilled." But the sanctuary of retirement was a luxury he couldn't afford. A paternity suit, his father's declining health from meningitis, and his mother's heart attack left the hero broke and desperate. The Golden Boy was forced into the pro ranks not for glory, but as a survivalist. On February 5, 1977, he debuted for $40,000, a sum that felt like a fortune then, but was merely the first brick in a financial cathedral. This transition from amateur to professional wasn't just a career change. It was the birth of a multi-million-dollar entity that would eventually change the landscape of professional sports forever, proving that an athlete could be a CEO as much as a warrior. By the 1980s, he had evolved into the first true corporate athlete. Leonard wasn't just fighting in the biggest events, he was building them. His fights helped pioneer the super fight era, where elite matchups became global financial spectacles worth tens of millions. He understood that boxing wasn't just a sport, it was premium content. Under the calculated guidance of attorney Mike Traynor, he incorporated himself as Sugar Ray Leonard Incorporated, transforming his physical talent into a high-yield asset. At his peak, he wasn't just earning millions. He was controlling the flow of every cent, ensuring that his wealth was the result of meticulous design rather than athletic luck. He commanded staggering sums that shifted the economy of the sport, pulling in over $31 million from the legendary Durán trilogy alone and orchestrating a $20 million payout for his historic heist against marvelous Marvin Hagler. But here's the part nobody saw coming. Even a $100 million empire wasn't enough to protect him from himself. However, The myth of Sugar Ray wasn't built solely in boardrooms. It was forged in the fires of psychological warfare. What made Leonard different wasn't just speed or power, it was control. He could outthink punchers, outfight technicians, and adapt in real time, turning every opponent's strength into a weakness. He was the ultimate chameleon of a ring. If he wanted to brawl, he would dance. If he wanted to box, he would pressure. In 1980, he executed a masterpiece of mental destruction against the ferocious Roberto Durán. In their No Mas rematch, Leonard didn't just outbox the Panamanian. He dismantled his pride through sheer humiliation. He wound up his arm in a dramatic BOLO punch, a signature move that became a visual hallmark of his dominance, using the theatrical wind-up to distract Durán just long enough to land a stinging jab. He followed this with a 1981 war of attrition against Thomas Hearns, a fight where he proved his chin was as iron as his will. Trailing on all cards, Ray reached into a dark place and produced a 14th round stoppage that remains one of the most dramatic comebacks in history. This was the hallmark of the Four Kings era, a period where Leonard, Hearns, Hagler, and Durán traded greatness like a currency, and Leonard was the only one to emerge with a winning record against all three. But his magnum opus came in 1987. After 3 years of retirement and a detached retina that many thought would leave him blind, he stepped into the ring against the monster of the division, Marvin Hagler. It remains the most debated split decision in history, a brilliant display of ring generalship where Ray used flurries of speed and theatrical showmanship to steal rounds from a legendary champion. It wasn't just a win, it was a $20 million heist to the middleweight throne that cemented his status as the sport's greatest master strategist. This wealth translated into a lifestyle that was elegant, powerful, and remarkably disciplined, serving as a protective barrier against the typical pitfalls of fame. Leonard's garage serves as a mechanical timeline of his evolution, reflecting a man who appreciated the engineering of speed. In the 1980s, he was often seen behind the wheel of a Cadillac Eldorado convertible, a white-walled symbol of American peak performance and high-status luxury that fit his golden boy persona. As his brand matured into that of a global corporate athlete, he transitioned to the German precision of a Mercedes-Benz SL Roadster, a sleek machine that matched his refined, post-retirement public image. For the moments he craved raw performance, he turned to the Porsche 911 Carrera, a vehicle that mirrored his own ring style. Fast, precise, and dangerous. While other fighters blew their millions on fleets of flamboyant supercars they couldn't afford to maintain or insure, Ray's collection, which also featured custom Ford Mustangs and Chevrolet Corvettes, reflected a man who appreciated the horsepower of his engine but respected the fame of his name too much to let it stall out in bankruptcy court. Yet, despite this outward bravado, Ray battled a demon almost no one saw: extreme stage fright. Before every major bout, he suffered from a paralyzing anxiety in the dressing room that left him physically ill. He doubted his strength and feared the permanent damage of a brutal fight, a deep-seated vulnerability that only vanished the moment the first bell rang. It was as if he had to kill the man known as Ray Charles Leonard to allow the icon Sugar Ray to survive the night. But eventually, the Golden Boy mask began to crack under the weight of his own secrets. In 1982, a detached retina forced a premature retirement, and without the structured violence of the ring to anchor him, he spiraled into a void of his own making. For 4 years, he was a gilded ghost in his own mansion, drowning in cocaine and alcohol while the world still looked to him as a hero. He was trying to outrun a childhood trauma that few could imagine: sexual abuse from a prominent Olympic-level trainer that created a spiritual void no world title or $20 million check could ever fill. This internal pain inevitably bled into his first marriage to Juanita Wilkinson, creating a volatile domestic environment that stood in sharp contrast to his perfect public persona. At his lowest point, the same empire that made him a global icon was one decision away from collapsing completely. During their high-profile 1990 divorce, testimony of domestic abuse surfaced, threatening to permanently dismantle the multi-million-dollar brand that served as the foundation of his empire. At that moment, Sugar Ray Leonard wasn't just losing his marriage. He was on the verge of losing the very identity he had spent a decade building. Years later, in his autobiography, The Big Fight, he did something few legends ever do. He publicly admitted to the abuse and his struggles with substance, linking them to the drug-fueled lows of his addiction. The true turning point in Ray's life didn't happen under the bright lights of Vegas, but at a Luther Vandross concert in the early 90s where he met Bernadette Roby, a former Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. They married in 1993, and over the last 33 years, Bernadette has been more than a spouse. She has been the architect of his stability and the co-pilot of his brand survival. In his post-boxing life, Ray refused to become a cautionary tale or a fading relic. He reinvented himself as a premier boxing analyst for HBO and ESPN, proving that his ring IQ was just as potent in the broadcast booth. He brought a fighter's perspective to the microphone, breaking down the tactical errors of heavyweights with the same surgical precision he once used to exploit them. This role allowed him to narrate the rise of the next generation while earning millions more in broadcast fees and appearances, ensuring he remained a contemporary authority in the sport rather than a ghost of its past. In 2026, this partnership remains the foundation of his $120 million empire. Ray is now a father of 4 and a grandfather of 6, often telling interviewers that his grandchildren fill a void that the cheering crowds of 50,000 people never could. For him, the quiet pride of watching a grandchild succeed in school or sports is the ultimate win after a life spent fighting for the world's fickle approval. Today, he lives in a 16,700 square foot Italian-style villa in the Pacific Palisades, a masterwork of architecture valued at nearly $50 million. A sprawling fortress of Jerusalem stone and hand-carved marble that stands as a silent monument to his financial survival. The estate features 7 bedrooms, a world-class gym where he still trains, and a wine cellar. But its most used feature is the tennis court where Ray spends his quiet mornings. At 69, the physical toll of 40 professional fights is evident in his deliberate gait and the stiffness in his joints. Yet he remains in peak physical shape, a regular fixture on the exclusive tennis circuits of Los Angeles. His legacy is now defined by service rather than conquest, hosting the 15th annual Big Fighters, Big Cause charity boxing night. This made him raise millions for juvenile diabetes through his Sugar Ray Leonard Foundation. He also quietly funds youth boxing programs in underprivileged neighborhoods, providing equipment and mentorship to ensure the next shy boy in Palmer Park has a safe place to find his voice without having to sell his soul to the highest bidder. Beyond the ring, he revolutionized the athlete as brand concept, securing multi-million-dollar endorsement deals with giants like 7-Up, Coca-Cola, and Ford that dwarfed the earnings of his contemporaries. He was the first athlete to truly understand the power of his own likeness. He didn't want a promoter to own his future. He wanted to own the promoter's desk, taking a massive percentage of the gate and pay-per-view revenue that usually went to the middleman. This was the sophisticated blueprint for what we now know as the money team model, decades before Floyd Mayweather turned it into a lifestyle. In a sport where legends go broke, Ray didn't just earn millions. He built a system that protected every dollar. He was the only member of the legendary Four Kings to truly conquer the commercial world, leveraging his golden boy image to command 7-figure deals that fundamentally shifted the power dynamic between athlete and industry. He proved that a fighter didn't have to die broke to be remembered as a legend. Ultimately, Sugar Ray Leonard is a reminder that a legacy isn't defined by your best rounds. It's defined by the 40 years that follow the final bell. But his greatest victory was defeating the reflection he saw in the mirror during his darkest nights. He didn't just survive the sport of boxing. He mastered the art of life after it, a feat that most champions, blinded by the flashbulbs and the roar of the crowd, never managed to achieve. In a sport where legends lose everything, Sugar Ray Leonard didn't just survive. He figured out something most champions never do: how to win after the fight is over. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the quiet empire of Sugar Ray, Hit that like button and subscribe. Does Ray deserve more credit for his business savvy? Or will his personal struggles always be a shadow? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.